It all started with a loud bang on my front gate, one of those knocks that makes your stomach drop before you even get up to check. I looked through the camera and, of course, there she was. Karen. Not just any Karen, but the HOA Karen. The one who thinks every road, every rule, and every ranch should bend to her will. She wasn't just knocking. She was demanding. Again. Now let me back up a little. For months, this woman had been cutting through my private ranch like it was her personal shortcut to the main road. Never asked. Never said thank you. Just helped herself to my land like it was a public sidewalk. I tried being polite. I even put up signs. But nothing worked. So I finally did what I had every right to do. I locked the gate. That's when things got wild. Today, she didn't just show up on foot. No, this time she brought backup. I'm talking about a full scene, cell phone in hand, HOA badge around her neck like she was law enforcement and trailing behind her. 2 local officers who looked just as confused as I felt. She told them I was violating community access. I told them I owned the property and that she had no right to trespass. The looks on their faces? Priceless. You could feel the tension in the air. The cops were stuck in the middle of a neighbor feud that had clearly hit a breaking point. Karen was going on about community needs, and I was just standing there wondering how on earth we got to this point. That's when one of the officers asked the question that changed everything. Do you have proof she's been cutting through regularly? Oh, I had proof. But showing it? That would turn this whole thing upside down. And trust me, it only gets crazier from here. So when the officer asked if I had proof, I just gave him a nod and pointed to the camera mounted near my barn. It's been there for months, ever since I started noticing tire tracks that didn't match mine or any delivery truck. The ranch is a few acres, private, fully fenced, and it's not some shortcut to anywhere unless you're trying to shave a few minutes off your drive. Karen, of course, had been doing exactly that, cutting through from the back road and slipping out the main gate like she owned the place. I could see her face twist when I mentioned the footage. That HOA confidence started to crack just a bit. Still, she kept talking, claiming she had some old agreement with the previous owner. Funny thing is, I've spoken to the last owner. He warned me about her. Said she'd been a thorn in his side too, always pushing the limits, acting like the HOA gave her some kind of power over everyone's land out here. Spoiler, it doesn't. The officers asked if we could step inside and talk. I invited them in, but Karen tried to follow too. I had to stop her right there. This isn't your property, I told her, calmly but firmly. That only fired her up more. She accused me of being hostile, said I was disrupting the community's flow. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Since when did a rancher's gate become a public traffic concern? We sat down and I pulled up the footage. Days and days of her Jeep slipping in and out, sometimes twice a day. But just as I was about to hit play and show the cops everything, something caught my eye in one of the clips. Something I hadn't noticed before. And that's where things really started to unravel. As I paused the footage, my finger hovering over the play button, I noticed something strange. In one of the clips, early morning, barely any light, Karen's Jeep wasn't alone. There was another car right behind her, just far enough to stay out of clear view. It wasn't a neighbor I recognized. No HOA sticker, no ranch decal, just a dark SUV creeping along like it didn't want to be seen. That changed everything. This wasn't just about Karen trespassing anymore. Now there were questions I couldn't ignore. The officers leaned in, watching closely. Karen stood near the door, arms crossed, trying to act unbothered, but I could see her shifting her weight, stealing glances at the screen. I asked her straight up, "Who was behind you that morning?" She played dumb, said she had no idea what I was talking about, and that maybe it was just a neighbor following the usual route. But this isn't a usual route. It's private land, with gates for a reason. It started to click for me. What if she wasn't just using my ranch as a shortcut? What if she was letting others in too? Maybe friends, contractors, who knows? That would explain the random boot prints by the shed a few weeks back, or the time I heard my dogs barking like mad near the north fence at midnight. I'd brushed it off back then. Now it felt different. It felt connected. One of the officers asked Karen again if she had permission to be on the property. She danced around the question, talking about easements and community access points, but she couldn't show a single document. Meanwhile, I was pulling more footage, more dates. It was a pattern. Early mornings, late evenings, the same route every time. And then, in one clip, I spotted something I hadn't expected at all. Someone on foot, walking behind her car after the gate had already closed. That wasn't just trespassing. That felt like something else entirely. I leaned in closer to the screen, rewinding that same clip, frame by frame. The gate had already shut behind Karen's Jeep, but a few seconds later, clear as day, a figure appeared. Hood up, walking fast, almost like they were trying not to be seen. Not just someone wandering. This was someone who knew what they were doing. The timestamp was around 6:17 a.m., a time I'm never outside and definitely not expecting visitors. My heart started pounding. This wasn't just about trespassing anymore. This was about security, about trust, and about someone using my land, for reasons I didn't understand. The officers exchanged a quick look. I could tell this was bigger than they thought when they rolled up. One of them stepped outside to call it in, probably to get a deputy or someone higher up involved. Karen stayed silent now. She wasn't yelling or throwing out HOA rules anymore. She just stared at the screen, lips tight, eyes locked on that shadowy figure walking across my property like it was nothing. I asked her again, "Who is that?" She said she didn't know, but I could see it in her face. She wasn't surprised. She was nervous. And then came the next twist. I remembered something. 2 weeks back, I found the side latch on my barn door halfway open. I figured it was the wind. Or maybe I hadn't shut it properly, but now I wasn't so sure. I asked the officer still inside if we could check the footage from that morning too. We skipped ahead, same route, same car. And behind it, again, that same figure. Only this time they weren't walking. They were carrying something. A duffel bag, heavy, slung low. My stomach dropped. I didn't know what was in that bag, but I knew one thing. Karen wasn't just looking for a shortcut. Something deeper was going on, and I was standing in the middle of it. I froze the frame right on that duffel bag. It wasn't just some random hiker passing through. This was deliberate. Whoever that person was, they weren't just cutting across my land. They were using it for something hidden. And Karen? She wasn't just trespassing anymore. She was helping. Whether she admitted it or not, her silence said plenty. But then came the second twist. As I pulled up another clip, this one from just 3 days ago, something different stood out. The gate had never opened. Yet somehow, both Karen's Jeep and that same dark SUV were already inside the property, parked by the tree line near the east side of the ranch, an area I rarely visit. There's no entrance over there. No road, no driveway, nothing. Just brush, barbed fencing, and woods. I zoomed in. The SUV had a tarp over the plates, and Karen was standing next to it, talking to someone I'd never seen before. That's when I knew something was seriously off. This wasn't about a shortcut or neighborly access. This felt organized, planned. And suddenly, I started to question how long this had been going on. Had Karen been using my ranch as a drop-off point? Was she letting people in through some hidden access I didn't know about? The officer came back in and saw the new footage. His whole vibe shifted, less casual, more alert. He made another call, this time stepping away from the porch entirely. Karen tried to leave, claiming she had an HOA board meeting to get to. but they asked her to stay. She didn't like that one bit. She kept checking her phone, texting someone over and over, her fingers shaking just enough to notice. I didn't say anything. I just watched her. Because in that moment, I realized I had no idea what I'd actually uncovered. This wasn't just about trespassing or property rights anymore. Something much bigger was moving under the surface of my quiet little ranch, and I was only just beginning to understand what I was up against. The tension hit a peak when 2 unmarked trucks rolled up the drive less than 30 minutes after the officer's second call. Plainclothes deputies stepped out, serious faces, no small talk. They asked to see the footage again, especially the one with the SUV under the trees and the figure with the duffel bag. One of them stepped outside to check the eastern fence line while the others stayed behind, watching the clips like they'd seen something like this before. Karen didn't say a word now. She just sat stiff on the edge of the porch, eyes darting, between the screen and the tree line in the distance. One of the deputies came back with his radio still clipped open. "We found a cut section in the east fence," he said. "It's been used a lot. Ground's worn down." I felt a chill go down my spine. That meant they weren't just sneaking in through the gate. There was a whole back route carved into my property, likely used for weeks, maybe months. And Karen? She had to have known. That was no coincidence. Then came the final blow. The deputies recognized the man from the footage, the one walking behind the Jeep carrying the duffel bag. He was tied to an ongoing investigation, not just trespassing, smuggling. They didn't say much more than that, but the looks exchanged told me everything. My quiet little ranch had somehow become part of something much larger. And Karen, well, she wasn't just helping herself to my shortcut. She was helping someone else move under the radar. They detained her right there on my porch, calm but firm. She didn't protest, didn't yell, just looked straight ahead like she knew it was coming. The Jeep was towed, her phone taken. It should have ended there. But as they were leaving, one of the deputies turned to me and asked, "Have you checked inside your barn lately?" I said not recently. He nodded, serious. "Might want to do that. We found fresh boot prints heading that way." That's when I realized, maybe this wasn't over yet. That night, after everything calmed down and the cruisers had cleared out, I walked out to the barn with a flashlight in one hand and my dog trailing close behind. The air felt heavy, like the land itself was holding on to all the noise and tension from earlier. I opened the barn door slowly, unsure what I'd find. But once I stepped inside, I saw what they were talking about. Fresh prints in the dust, and not mine. Someone had definitely been in there recently. Tucked behind a stack of hay bales was a tarp, carefully folded to cover a small stash of empty boxes and tools. Nothing illegal that I could see, but the boxes had markings. Shipping. Barcodes scratched off, no labels. Whoever had been using my land was hiding something, and Karen had helped make that possible. It was surreal. All this time, I thought I was dealing with an entitled neighbor using my ranch as a shortcut. But it turned out I was right in the middle of something I never saw coming. The next morning, I met with the deputies again. They told me I wouldn't be held responsible, that I'd done everything right by reporting what I saw and securing my land. Karen? She was now facing multiple charges, and from what they hinted at, she might have been part of this longer than anyone realized. Since then, I've reinforced the eastern fence, added more cameras, and upgraded the gate system. No one's getting through now without me knowing. And as quiet returned to the ranch, I realized something important. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. And sometimes, what looks like a small boundary issue with an HOA neighbor is really just the tip of something much bigger. Thanks for sticking with me. Stay sharp out there.